Elden Ring is one of the best games I have ever played. It is an absolute masterpiece and truly feels like From Software's magnum opus. The refined and improved upon mechanics, the enormous size and depth of the world, the spectacle of the bosses, and much more just make it so special. First, I want to give a little background to my Souls experience, and the lead up to Elden Ring. I only started playing these games from the Demon Souls remake. I had got my PS5 on release day, luckily, and needed some games for it. I then came across a trailer for a game called Demon Souls, which I had no idea about at the time. Sure, I heard about Dark Souls for the years, but I never cared to actually play them. But then I started my Demon Souls journey in December of 2020. I got through the first level without too many problems. However, as embarrassing as it is, I almost rage quit to the Tower Knight, which is so bad looking back on. I just couldn't do it, man. The archers were messing me up and he did so much damage, I was at a loss. So I literally had to Google builds, tips, just whatever, and eventually came across a guide for the game, so I followed that and it helped me through it. Looking back, I wish I would have just persevered, as these games are best on a first blind playthrough, but after beating the game I was hooked on the series. I was seeing what games were next, the lore, everything. It was just so good. So I then played Dark Souls 1 and it was the best game I've ever played up until that point. Then I went on to Dark Souls 2 and rage quit at the Iron Keep because that game is really bad. And no, I don't want to hear it. Dark Souls 2 is a bad game. It can be fun and sometimes I do get an itch to play it. But like 2 hours in, I remember why I hate it and quit again. So I skipped DS2 for a while. I eventually did come back and beat the whole game and all the bosses. But then after I played Dark Souls 3, and to this day it is still a contender for my favourite FromSoft title. It felt so good to play and the bosses were the best the series still has to offer. Then after I played Bloodborne and Sekiro, which I enjoyed a lot as well. And I would have beaten all the games by around summer of 2021, and I was so eager for what was next to come. So it was just a waiting game, until the Summer Games Fest in 2021 when we got the first trailer for Elden Ring. And holy shit, I have never in my life been so excited for a game. It looked absolutely incredible and the initial release date was January 2022, so it wasn't even far. What was really strange though was that it wasn't just the Souls community that were hyped, but a lot of the wider gaming community also. The Souls games have always been semi-niche, right? The highest selling game before Elden Ring was Dark Souls 3 with around 10 million copies sold. And any other games were around half of that in sales, which I understand that the Souls games have a too hard stigma about them, which is definitely a reason why they don't sell as much. And obviously if you have played the games you know that that is completely wrong. But anyway, the games have never been as mainstream as other AAA titles. However now, 2 years on, Elden Ring has sold over 20 million copies. That's pretty much double the second highest title, which that alone just proves how many people were excited about it. So anyway, after the Summer Games Fest, the next big thing was the gameplay preview in early November, which showed around 20 minutes of gameplay, and again it looked amazing. It showed multiple regions, traversal on Torrent, caves, field bosses, and some gameplay of Stormvale and Godric. It was great as it didn't show too much of the game, but was plenty to get more hype built up. And then there was the closed network test, where selected players by Bandai Namco got to play the game in mid-November. They got to play most of Limgrave and up to Margit, and it was really good to see people playing the game and seeing what it had to offer. During all this, the game was also pushed back until February 25th of 2022, which was only a month or so away, so it wasn't too drastic. However, on the 25th of February 2022, Elden Ring released and offered one of the greatest gaming experiences of my life. The feeling you get when you open up the door into Limgrave and you see this huge area that you're able to freely go wherever your heart desires. You see a massive castle in the background that you can go to, or you can see what else Limgrave has to offer. You can challenge the tree sentinel you see straight away, however you may realise he is a bit too difficult right now, but that's no matter. You can always go away, level up, get some new armour and weapons and come back. The exploration is truly unmatched in Elden Ring. Wherever you go, you will find something of interest, whether it be some ruins with some items and a boss, a good new weapon or armor, or you might even be transported to a whole new area, and when you look at your map, you realise you're on the complete other side of it. After you reach your third site of grace, which is Elden Ring's bonfires, you will meet Melina, a finger maiden whose goal is to help you reach the Erd Tree and become Elden Lord. You will also receive Torrent, your mount, which will make traversing the lands between much faster. Torrent can also reach places the player otherwise can't, which also adds to the exploration. Limgrave is a great introduction as there are a lot of caves to go explore. They're pretty much everywhere, and some are also shown on the map to give some guidance. And they all have some unique bosses to fight and useful items and tools throughout. There are plenty of field bosses to fight, some only appearing at night such as the Knight's Cavalry, and in between you have NPCs to interact with, different puzzle towers, and plentiful healing and physic flask upgrades. Limgrave gives more than enough preparation for Stormvale Castle, whose first challenge is Margit the Fell. Now Margit is quite a problematic boss. Now, since Stormvale is pretty much the first main thing you will do on your playthrough, some players may go to Margit quite early, maybe even first thing, and Margit is no joke. Margit has a lot of health for an early encounter, and he also has a very hard and, dare I say, unfair moveset. Margit is the first real look of Elden Ring's boss philosophy. I would say Margit and a few others are borderline unfair. I'll go further into the bosses later on, however Margit has many different combos that literally cannot be dodged fully out of. If he starts one, he attacks so fast that you can't get out of range without a light roll, which wasn't even in the game at launch and was later patched in. And with Margit and a few others as well, you can tell they were made for light rolling. And not only that, but Margit can end one of his 10-second long combos and then go into another one instantly. The fairness of the prior game's bosses seems to have been gone, as even bosses as hard as Gale or Midir, they had their different combos, but they gave you time to get an attack or two in yourself. So many people found themselves struggling with Margit, and understandably so. But it is also quite a positive thing, as it is a reminder that this is an open world game, and if you are struggling you can always come back later after you've done some other content and will be better equipped. Before going to Stormvale Castle, you can go to 3 other regions which are all intended for after Limgrave. You can go to Caelid, which is the big red sky area off to the right of Limgrave. Now Caelid is not necessary for game progression, and it does feel like a full optional area, as a lot of the enemies are incredibly difficult, even in the end game. It is full of huge dogs and birds, and the bosses definitely feel like late game ones with their enormous health bars and devastating damage. Liurnia is the second area needed for progression. It opens up with a beautiful view from a cliff, and you can see different landmarks that you can go to. And again, Liurnia has lots of caves, dungeons, bosses, and more to discover. And if you have gotten the 2 parts of the Dectus medallion, you can go straight to the Altus Plateau, the third area for progression. Now at this point, when I play Elden Ring, you can get extremely overpowered. Before even fighting one of the Remembrance bosses, you can get to level like 60 plus, have a +9 somber weapon, which they only go up to +10 anyway, and have so many spells, incantations, and ashes of war which will make you just so overpowered. This is, in my opinion, it is incredible, as you can choose your own progression path, and it really won't matter on a first playthrough since you don't know what's coming next anyway, so you're gonna follow the most logical progression that you can see. The open world is so good. There are 4 Remembrance bosses you can beat before the Leyndell capital, which has been the goal since the beginning of the game, and you only need to kill 2 of them anyway, so you can choose any 2 and then continue on from there. And then even after Leyndell, you have another huge open snow area with even more to explore, and if that's not enough, in Limgrave there is an elevator that is in the middle of nowhere, just hidden in some forest, and you go down it for like a full minute, and it opens up into a gorgeous underground world with even more to do. The game literally keeps going on, and not once did it feel like it outstayed its welcome. The freedom you have is really incredible, and there's just so much to see and do. My first playthrough lasted around 43 hours, and the only other single player game that I can think of that I've spent anywhere near that amount of time is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is one of the most dogshit games I've ever played in my entire life. Out of the 40 or so hours I spent playing that game, I must have enjoyed around 3, if that, and only beat the game out of just pure necessity just to finish it, because I got so far through anyway. So for any game to hold my attention for that length of time and not get bored, but in fact it gets better the more I played, truly shows how special it was. The legacy dungeons are the main areas where you fight most of the remembrance bosses. You have the three major ones that are Stormvale, Raya Lucaria and Leyndell, and some minor ones as well like the Volcano Manor and Redmane Castle. There are your more traditional Souls style levels with a more streamlined route through them. There's still plenty to do, however. In Stormvale there's random edges and cliffs that if you look down there will be a rooftop that you can jump to and it opens up a whole new path through the castle. And in Leyndell there are so many different paths to take and secrets to find, it really feels incredible, and to think the only thing that enables this is the addition of a jump button. It's so simple and yet it opens up so many possibilities in the game. Now mechanically Elden Ring is probably the most advanced of the Souls series, right? Excluding Sekiro, because that's a different kind of game, right? You have all the traditional things, rolling, light and heavy attacks, etc. But there are a few changes that Elden Ring made, which do change up the way you play the game. For starters, you can crouch now, which makes stealth a lot easier, and you're able to hide in bushes and other things to avoid detection. But there's also, as I've mentioned, the jump button, which seems like a simple little thing, but changes so much how the game plays. Exploration is so much better with jumping, as you can jump over rooftops, looking for items and different approaches to areas. Sometimes you may spot a little ledge below a barrier that you can jump over and find a whole new area. There are little parkour spots to reach items, and overall it just adds another layer to exploring the world. Combat is also better with the ability to jump. You can now do jumping attacks, which do more damage and posture damage to enemies than normal light or heavy attacks. There are also some attacks enemies and bosses do that you can jump over, although there aren't that many, and most of the time it's probably easier just to roll anyway. The thing about the jumping attacks though is that in my first playthrough, so I played with the Grafted Blade, a giant colossal sword as all real Souls players would, and I never found myself not doing a jump attack. Unless there wasn't enough time or something, but they do so much more damage and much more posture damage as well, and since the normal attacks of colossal weapons were so slow at launch, which they did have to patch later on, that it was kind of pointless to not do a jump attack. Power stancing also makes a welcome return. You can power stance any two weapons in the same category and they have their own moveset. There's a lot of versatility to be had with it as well, as you can have, let's say for instance, one weapon doing magic damage and another doing bleed damage, or whatever setup you would want, so you can make some pretty cool and unique builds. There are also the addition of guard counters, where if you block an attack with a shield or even your weapon, you can follow up with a heavy attack and it does more damage as well. They have increased the damage reduction from just your weapon when guarding as well, so the counters are a more viable option in combat. Stakes of Marika were introduced in Elden Ring. Basically at most bosses there is now a checkpoint where you can spawn back there when you die or back at a grace. There is nothing more frustrating than a long boss run back. I'm talking to you, Dark Souls 2. So these were a really good addition. However, there are some times where they are missing for an unknown reason. Now I understand why the one in Raya Lucaria isn't there, the lore with Marika being at war with the scholars there. But what about Placidusax, for instance? Now maybe I don't know the lore enough, but no matter what, I care more about a minute and a half run back than some justification in the lore for why there isn't one there. So Elden Ring truly excels with the gameplay and the open world, but I do want to talk a bit about one of the bigger problems the game does have. There is a lot of discourse about Elden Ring's bosses. There are 165 in total, with 15 being remembrance bosses, who are entirely unique and are the main bosses of the game essentially. The rest are found in caves, dungeons, or just as field bosses throughout the world. It's hard to put them into a ranking as there's just so damn many of them. Outside of remembrance bosses, the boss quality is kind of all over the place. You have some genuine fun bosses such as the Crucible Knights or the Falling Star Beast, etc. However, the rest are either pretty fun, average, or just downright bad, and then some of them are just two other bosses you find put together in one arena. It really does damage multiple playthroughs, as you will know whether a cave will be worth your time or not depending on the boss found there. I mean, some are just normal enemies given a health bar, and there are a lot of repeats throughout with just different names. And sure, an issue like this is bound to happen with the size of Elden Ring, but on my first playthrough it wasn't too big of a deal, as I was just so happy to be finally playing the game, right, so everything felt fun and unique. But afterwards, since you don't experience it for the first time, you pretty much skip all the dungeons unless there's a very specific item or something that you'd want for your build. However, as I said, I think it's fine for your first playthrough, and a game like Elden Ring, especially with it being open world, it's all about finding these secrets and doing everything for the first time, so repeat playthroughs don't really matter as much to most people. The Remembrance bosses have their own flaws as well, unfortunately. Now, there are some genuine great bosses, such as Godfrey, Radahn, Radagon, Malekith, and Placidusax. Godfrey has a really fun moveset and feels fair to fight him. He doesn't have too much health, but not too little either. Radahn is one of the coolest bosses in the entire series. He is extremely intimidating and hits really hard, but once you learn his moveset, it can be really fun, and his phase transition is probably the best in this series as well. Radagon, even though he is just phase 1 to the final boss, he is still one of the better fights in the game. The intro when he pulls out the hammer and the final boss theme starts playing is so good, and the fight itself is really fun also. Now, Malekith is just so badass, right? The first phase is, it's okay at best, right? But when he reveals himself and he just starts bloody flipping around the arena, it's just so fun. And Placidusax is mainly one of my favourite bosses because of the spectacle. It's just so damn good. You go into the arena and he's just floating in midair in this huge arena with tornadoes, and it's just so cool. And when he disappears and is in this lightning cloud flying around the arena, and then his big Midir laser is very good aesthetically. And mechanically the fight is complete fucking garbage, right? The run back takes 3 working days, but he's just so cool, so I don't mind it too much. And Rykard deserves a mention as well, as he is the best gimmick style fight the series has done, as it's more of a normal fight, but the addition of the Serpent Hunter does spice it up a little bit. And there are a few others that are pretty good or fine, however there are a few that have pretty major problems. As I've already mentioned about Margit's combos being quite unfair, as you can't punish and he can follow up combos instantly, Morgott takes that to a whole new level. Morgott has a very similar moveset with a few twists, but the problems still remain. Morgott's combos are so goddamn long, and then he just starts attacking instantly, making punish windows inconsistent. You never really know when it's safe to get your own attack in, or if he'll just start up another 10-second long attack. And also with Morgott, he'll start a combo that cannot be dodged out of. Now, fast rolling does allow you to outdistance some of the hits, however, not only was that not even in the game at launch, but you shouldn't have to be light rolling to be able to dodge an attack. He starts up the combo, and no matter what, some attacks will hit you before or after you roll. Elden Beast has to be the most lackluster final boss in the series, especially since it comes right after a really solid fight. Aesthetically it looks very elegant, however the fight itself is just chasing after it. It does seem that Torrent was meant to be accessible in this fight. The arena is huge, there's plenty of attacks Torrent could jump and avoid, and you can catch Elden Beast a lot easier. It's also good for the story, right? You and Torrent get to take on the final battle together, and has more meaning since Melina gave you him, and since if you do the normal ending, she gives her life for you to become the Elden Lord. But I digress. So instead you have to chase Elden Beast around, and when you do finally reach it, he also has the Elden Stars attack, which is just these orbs that follow you for so long and take up your screen, all while the Elden Beast can still attack like normal. It really is a disappointment, man. And of course we can't talk about bad boss mechanics without mentioning the most notorious boss in Souls history. Melania starts well, her attacks are fair and fun to dodge, and then when you get her to around 75% health, or around there, she pulls out Waterfill, and oh my days, this is the most bullshit attack ever. No matter what, if you are reasonably close to her, when she goes into the air, you will get hit by it. She covers pretty much the whole arena, so the only way to avoid is to try and prepare for her to do it and outdistance it, which then makes the player play subdued as they would normally be engaging with the boss, however now they are just trying to bait out one terrible attack. And to make it even better, she regens health on hit, so if you somehow don't die to waterfall, she'll just get a lot of health back anyway, so you're back to square one. Phase 2 only gets worse. She can still do waterfall, and now with Scarlet Rot damage too, because of course she does, and she also has a new attack which summons clones that will also cover the entire arena. And there are also some other mix-ups, such as some attacks having follow-ups of Scarlet Rot burst, but they aren't bad at all. They're actually a really good addition for the second phase. And it really is such a shame, since the Malenia fight otherwise is really fun. She's difficult enough, but still really fun and aggressive without waterfall. I spent 5 hours on my first playthrough fighting her, which is easily the longest I've ever spent on a boss, and all because of one attack that is just completely unfair. Hopefully From Software don't look at Malenia's infamy for their next game's bosses or even the DLC.
No, 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 no. Wait. Wait.
However, with all that said, Elden Ring truly is one of the greatest games of all time. On a first playthrough basis, it is my favourite game ever. I have never been so excited for a game in my life, and it absolutely met my expectations, which is sadly a rare occurrence in games nowadays. What's really great about it is that there were so many players who have never played a Souls game before who purchased Elden Ring, and sure, some of them definitely just bought into the hype to try the game, and when they realised it is just as punishing and difficult and similar to the other Souls games, they were definitely left with a bad impression. But the players who tried it and loved it and then went on to play the other games was great to see, as these games truly are special, and I'm glad Elden Ring was accessible to new players and opened their eyes, so to speak, to this series. Everyone on social media was playing it, talking about their experiences and overall just having an amazing time, which is also rare among gamers. I doubt there will ever be a game again that has impacted me like Elden Ring, and I cannot wait for the DLC. I'm sure it will be incredible as well, and then I'll be anxiously awaiting FromSoft's next title, which will no doubt be another great game. But that's all from me, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on Elden Ring in the comments and how your playthrough went. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.